Last year I spotted someone selling loads of old Warhammer stuff on Facebook. It looked like he was having a proper clear out, getting rid of his childhood collection. I met the guy, a really nice chap called Lee. He worked in tourism and hospitality, and COVID had obviously turned all of that on its head by mid-2020, and he was selling literally everything he owned, upping, leaving, and starting a new life. So a full late 80s, early 90s collection buyout for £500. I mean, it's a business expense, right? This stuff is all potential future videos. Among all the well-used and well-loved Hero Quest, Space Crusade, Warhammer and Dungeons & Dragons stuff was this pretty heavy box. Now, hobby old-timers will have a pretty good idea of what is in a box like this, but let's put a pin in this for now, build the suspense, and segue perfectly into talking about Warhammer recasting. Now before we begin, I want to add a little disclaimer here. I am talking about recasting. I'm not advocating, not advising, not showing you how to do it, just commenting and giving insight on the moral implications involved. I'm basically reporting, and reporting on a crime isn't a crime. Also, you'll know if you watched my video explaining why I decided to terminate my non-disclosure agreement with Games Workshop, I'm not paid by them, I'm not affiliated with them, I don't get anything early, I don't get anything for free. I see, read, and hear things exactly when you do, which lets me be totally free and honest with you about things like this. Now what actually is recasting? Put simply, it's when you take an original model or part, create a mold of it, and then cast that model or part again. You can obviously do this by yourself. It's a bit messy and tricky, but it's possible. But this assumes that you already own the model that you want to make copies of. There are also groups of people and mysterious underground companies that do this on a much larger scale, and actually offer you catalogues of miniatures they can recast and sell to you. But why bother? Why not just buy the official models? Well, there's two main reasons. First off, it's cheaper than buying the originals, sometimes much cheaper. Let's not mess around here, Warhammer isn't exactly a cheap hobby, and people are always looking for more affordable ways of getting models, whether they're buying army boxes, splitting box games with friends, or buying second-hand models. And for some people, the idea of getting models for cheaper, maybe even half price, is incredibly tempting. The second main reason is that recasting lets painters, kit bashers, and wargamers get hold of rare, out-of-production models that Games Workshop simply don't make anymore. I mean, the reason I'm doing this video is because so many people were annoyed that the Space Hulk Blood Angels I showed off in a recent video are no longer available, and command pretty crazy prices on eBay. Old models, particularly less common stuff, are often prohibitively expensive on the resale market for all but the most affluent hobbyists. So that's recasting in a nutshell. Now let's take a few minutes to explain why some people, particularly Games Workshop, think it's bad. I mean, it's theft. Specifically, it's theft of intellectual property, basically stealing someone else's idea or concept and profiting from it. Every single model that Games Workshop makes has been the product of teams of people who spend time imagining, planning, designing, and manufacturing something. That has value, and that's exactly what you pay for when you buy full-price Games Workshop miniatures. Recasters have lower prices because, by the nature of their business, they have none of the processes I just listed. No R&D beyond the manufacturing side, just purely the physical process of casting. So with such a roaring trade in underground intellectual property theft, you might think that Games Workshop must have been run into the ground over the last 5 years, right? Well, not exactly. Their share price has seen a 1,600% increase. You can imagine that even people who would ordinarily be very moral and law-abiding might look at that and suddenly think that getting a few knockoff models for half price might not be such a bad thing. This isn't just a question of morality though, is it? Just like when you photocopy an original document multiple times, the quality of those copies degrades, and the quality of recast Warhammer models can be a bit hit and miss. The cheapest recasts are often bad quality, lots of mold slip, bubbles, warping, and have very thin sections of resin, so thin you can almost see through them. From my experience, this is common from stuff you generally find on eBay when you notice something is coming from Russia or the Far East for a suspiciously good price. I don't personally have experience of higher quality recasters, but I've been assured they do exist, and for a bit more money, but often at least 20 or 30% lower than the official Games Workshop prices, you can get a bit more care and attention with your recasts, which are often indistinguishable from Forge World resin. Morality and quality aside, it's often pretty hard to actually find recast Warhammer models. If you know where to look, you can buy directly from the recasters themselves, but the ordering process is a bit secretive and requires a bit of faith that the stuff will actually turn up. I mean, I can't imagine PayPal are going to care very much when your counterfeit goods get lost in the post. You can sometimes find things on Chinese import sites like AliExpress, but they're purged of all Games Workshop IP on a pretty regular basis. As I said before, you can pretty regularly find suspiciously cheap Warhammer models on eBay that, while they're listed as legit, they end up being recast when you receive them. And that's how I ended up with all this stuff I've been showing you so far. So that's the what, why, and how, I suppose, of Warhammer recasting. But there's an even more important question, really. Would you? There basically seems to be three schools of thought when it comes to recasting. The first is obviously that recasting is never okay because it's illegal. The second is that it might be okay under some circumstances, especially for out-of-production models. And the third is that it's okay all the time. Now this is where it might be kind of useful to have access to lots of people's opinions, maybe in the form of a survey, maybe from about 22,000 people. Oh look, here's one I made earlier! 12% of the 22,000 people didn't know what I was talking about. Well, hopefully this video will enlighten them a bit. Just 6% took the lawful good moral high ground and said that recasting simply wasn't okay under any circumstance. 25%, a quarter of all hobbyists surveyed, said they had absolutely no problem with the idea of buying recasts because Warhammer is too expensive. 2% went even further and said they primarily use recast Games Workshop models, not originals. Nice to know I have a few Australian viewers. Now here's the thing that really shocked me. 56% said that they thought recasting was fine for old, out-of-production models, but not for new stuff. The keen-eyed among you will also notice these numbers add up to 101%. Quality YouTube rounding there. Again, this isn't my opinion, this is the opinion of 22,000 people, hobbyists, Games Workshop's target audience. Now if you break this down, of those who responded that actually knew what recasting was, that would be about 96% saying that recasting was okay in some circumstances. It's clear that while the mystery of where to find recasts, how to buy them, or potential legal implications may stop people from actually buying them in the first place, the vast majority have no problem with the concept of it, depending on the context. Now, no matter how you spin this, there's always going to be someone that isn't happy, whether it's hobbyists who can't afford the ever-increasing prices of new official models, vintage gamers who struggle to find older, out-of-production bits, and of course the people who actually made the stuff in the first place having their intellectual property stolen. I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently, and I think I've actually come up with a solution that might make everyone happy, if you can believe that. But wait a second, what about the box? Let me show you what's inside. It's basically an early 90s time capsule. We've got some issues of White Dwarf from 1992, and a full set of pristine Citadel miniature catalogues from 1991 to 1994. These are full of, you guessed it, every single model at Games Workshop produced during that time. Remember, back then they didn't have a website where you could browse their full range. Your only choice of finding what models were available was by seeing them in stores, finding new releases in White Dwarf, or using these catalogues. Along with each catalogue is a mail order form and a price list. So you would leaf through the catalogue, find the stuff you want, find the relevant page on the price list, check the price, write down your order details, tally up your total, don't forget to carry the 1, write out your check, send it off in the post, and a week or 3 later, your order's at the door. Now in terms of user-friendliness and delivery speed, we obviously have it much better these days. But what I absolutely love about this old system is that you can order literally anything in these catalogues and they send you that specific part. They even recommend this in the buying guide. So here on page 3 it says if you wanted just the swooping hawk's body or wanted the Exarch hawk wings instead, you would have to tell us 1 times hawk 3, page 95, body only, or 1 times hawk 3, page 95, supply with Exarch hawk wings. This couldn't be more different today. In 2021, aside from a few upgrade sprues, Games Workshop basically let you order full boxes, and that's it. Want just a specific torso or a weapon arm? Buy the whole box set, clip out the bits you want, and sell the rest on eBay. Or, I don't know, keep them in a box of shame until you need them again. Now you might be thinking, Guy, these catalogues are cool and everything, but what the hell does this have to do with recasting? And that's a good question. A little bit aggressively worded, but a good question. Basically, these catalogues got me to thinking. I understand why Games Workshop can't really do that anymore. You've got to keep advancing your model lines, keep things fresh, keep doing your bit for the economy. Who has time, resources, and manpower to cast, organise and ship thousands of 30-year-old models? Can you guess? Wait, did you say recasters? That's exactly what I was going to say. Now am I honestly suggesting that Games Workshop let other people make their stuff and sell it on their behalf? Well, yeah, I mean, they do it all the time now anyway. Most of their big terrain models and objective tokens are already made in China, not in the UK. They outsource the printing of a lot of their books to China too. That's one of the main reasons the Indomitus made-to-order reprints took 3 months to arrive. That's how long freight takes between China and the UK. They get other companies to print their artwork for them. They get other companies to make their licensed merchandise. They get other companies to create video games for them. I mean, yeah, sure, they have a bit of creative control, but by and large, it's the outsourced company that does most of the legwork. Now, with that in mind, is it such a stretch to imagine a third-party company creating official recasts of old models? If it happened, that would tick the happy boxes for most people. Hobbyists who think Warhammer is too expensive, people who want old models without paying scalper prices on eBay, and, if it reduced the amount of illegal recasting, Games Workshop. This does make a huge assumption though. Would Games Workshop be willing to drop their prices on models once they become legacy and not current line? Given their track record of pricing one-off made-to-order models even higher than they were originally, that might seem a bit unlikely. But I personally think it might be a pretty reasonable business decision to match that 20, 30, maybe 40% price reduction that illegal recasters offer. That way, they wouldn't have to do any of the work themselves, they would still be profiting from their decades-old IP on discontinued models where they would ordinarily just abandon them, and they would reduce the desire for illegal recasting. So that's one option, maybe a more traditional way of dealing with recasting, but I can think of a more contemporary solution to this problem. Not so much the elephant in the room, but the giant angry mammoth that's going to be smashing the tabletop industry to bits in a few years: 3D printing. Now, sure, you can find pretty good proxies or lookalikes for lots of Warhammer models on Thingiverse, Cults3D, and other repositories, but take a look at this. These are out of production 90s Warhammer parts that have been 3D scanned from the original sprues, cleaned up, and printed by not a factory, not a company, not a group of engineers, but a couple of hobbyists. They wanted retro parts for a project, they haven't been able to buy them from Games Workshop in 25 years, no one was recasting them, and no one was selling them in the quantity they needed. Also, when you're looking at this, keep in mind that consumer 3D printing and scanning is still in its awkward infancy really. Imagine what we'll be able to do in 2, 5, or even 10 years. So if a few passionate hobbyists can do all this now, in 2021, I don't think it's weird to suggest that an actual company, operating under a Games Workshop license, could be doing the same thing and better on an industrial scale, scanning all their old bits and printing items to order. No need to waste warehouse space with your inventory, just print what people want. You're basically just printing money that's currently left on the table. I reckon if Games Workshop implemented one or both of these suggestions, the hobby would be better for literally everyone. Except for illegal recasters. Now there is one big caveat here. It should be clear from everything I've said, but I am only talking about Games Workshop here, and not other companies. Quite a few underground recasters offer lines from smaller companies, often one-man operations or small cottage industries, and in quite a few cases this has totally put them out of business, and I think that's absolutely tragic. So there's obviously a lot to chew over and digest here, but I've tried to present everything in as neutral and impartial way as I can. But I'd honestly be really interested to hear what you think about all of this. Leave me a comment, and share this video if you think any of your friends might be interested. By the way, if you'd like to see what else was in that huge retro collection buyout, let me know if you'd like to see it, and if it sounds like you're interested, I'll make sure to do it sooner rather than later. I will show you some quick highlights of all these retro goodies while I read out this week's new Patreon supporters. Jarrett Hobbs, Jamie Quick, Peter McCourt, David Kesselrig, The Fat Duck, Tournament of Mongo, Matthew Kraus, Algernon Balderdash, Nathan Crowther, The Rexologist MD, Watching Paint Dry, Danny Revy, Harris Deshay, William Wallace, Geek Trivia Online, Grotchucker, Daniel Altendorf, William Baldwin, Ed Nerdin, Benjamin Daum, The Game Booth, Ayrton Chitwood, Ian Nelson, Taylor Kane Deadman, Eric Davidson, Joshua Lister, Mr. Omnomnom, Kit Stickland, Alexander Hardwick, Number One Cat Dad, Antos Wirrick, Nathan P. Rogers Madsen, Kevin Hickey, Timothy Vida, The Bugue, Matt Hilto, Kieran Maguire, Speckled Jim, Rich Richardson, Matthew Holiday, Mecha Mario 64, Connor Colgan, Cameron Layden, Vale Craftworks, Paul Parker, Walter, Alex Sorrell, Hyperion Robit, Flynn Lockwood, Nathan Brown, John Hammer, Stephen R., Naish, Justin Johnson, Noah Lambert, Cyberfossil, and Dune Hammer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.